Well, I belong to my local club, which is the Burlington Model Club, and you know, jets, you generally progress to jets. Some people jump right in, but there's a bit of a progression, and I was flying aerobatic planes and helicopters, and there was a progressment in technology too, with you know, LiPo batteries, and you know, turbines tend to be a little bit intimidating, at least they were to me. But I felt more comfortable with the electric, so I thought I would get into an electric jet first and kind of test the waters. And so I guess, you know, I was talking about it enough that somebody in my club, Gary Arthur, approached me. He says, he sat down beside me. I never spoke to him before. He says, so I understand you're getting into jets or considering a jet. Anyways, Gary's a real ambassador to the sport. Basically, he got me in. You know, and now I own a number of them, and I come to these events and enjoy the challenge of flying jets and then building jets, and the realism that's involved with them. You know, you get right down to nice little scale details, and this is a nice model, but by no means is it you know, an extreme model with a lot of detail and that. It's a kit of a F-15. Global Jet is the distributor, and they do. These are, I believe it's called a Jet Legend kit. It comes already painted. This one's had a long history, and I don't jump in too quickly. So this was my first scale jet, but I didn't want to invest a whole lot of money. So I found one that was totally crashed. The nose was knocked off of it. It had been through the weather. Everything needed to be rebuilt. So I had an old airplane, an aerobatic airplane, and I offered the gentleman a trade. We worked it out, and I think I came home with this in my car, you know, less engine and all the servos, and it was a winter project. I like to do a winter project. It's a Japanese scheme, and it just kind of caught my eye because I'd never seen one, and I decided to duplicate that. You know what's unique about this? This plane, I painted a base. Everybody's like all about primer this and base coat and all that, and then the clear coat. And you know what, I just didn't want a lot of weight on it. So what I did was I tinted my primer. So I bought a can of white primer, and that's what this is. And then I bought black and I bought blue tint. And then I tinted the primer for each of these. And then when I looked at it, I thought, I don't even want to add a clear on it. A clear is going to be, you know, it's another that much paint, whatever that is, and it's a pound or something. It adds up friggin' fast. So
no clear.
Yeah, no clear on it at all. Oh, I spent quite a lot. I can never really calculate that. You know. Yeah, it would be, if I sat down, it would be a few weeks work straight, I would imagine. You know, but I pick at it in the house, and I paint when nobody's around, and that kind of stuff, because it's a bit annoying. You have to. It's a bit of a smell, and well, my family's pretty used to it. I come from racing motorcycles, so I acquired my talent of painting through necessity. If I crashed my bike, I didn't want to have to buy new parts all the time. So and that was fairly regular event. So this isn't by far the fastest jet. I wouldn't even think it does much over 100 miles an hour. But there are jets that are here, and I have one of them, for example, that, you know, it's easily a 250 mile an hour jet. And that definitely keeps you on your toes. It's a Simjet 2300. 23 sort of represents the thrust. It apparently has about 23 pounds of thrust. Okay. When we put this on our little stand that we have, though, it's well over 24. It's a pretty strong running motor. So this is one turbine, but as you see at the back, there's actually two exhausts. So it goes through a bifurcated pipe, which just simply splits the air into two streams. It kind of creates a unique sound too. It sounds like it's cutting the air. It sounds rather menacing. Expo tends to hide things. It can delay something that you need to happen faster. So if you're more comfortable with setting up the type of throw that you need and not having too much so that it's not controllable, I fly all my planes at high rates now, and I leave it at a minimum expo, maybe 10%. Yeah. Maybe there's exceptions with certain aerobatic planes and that, but I used to fly at 25 or 30%, and now I'm back down to 10%. There's a new thing, not so new, but new to me. This year I started flying with some gyros. Yep. And when you add a gyro, a nice performing gyro, that's why you end up not needing any expo anymore, frankly. It smooths things out and helps you fly. So I went from installing a gyro with my normal expo, a 30% or so, And on one of my planes, it's very precise. I'm at 5% expo, and that's enough. I think that's just a mental thing, really. What you see here are 2 fuel tanks,
Yes.
but they're not the only 2 fuel tanks.
Okay.
These fuel tanks, they run in series. And what we got is a tank on the bottom is actually the first fuel tank. I think that holds a couple liters of fuel. If I fill that tank up and I fill these 2 tanks up, there's one more tank here.
Oh my God.
Okay, yeah. And then you got your final tank, the header tank. So there's a bunch of tanks in here. I can fly for 10 minutes at least. It's a heavy wing loading, and until it's out of a lot of fuel, it's a bit of a pig, because it's probably over 40 pounds for sure. And then you only have a 20 pound, 25 pound thrust. You lose a bit of thrust with a bifurcated pipe. But it's a good flying plane. You know, it smells like a jet. It runs on Jet A. It sounds like a jet. You can run on kerosene. You can also run on diesel. You know what? I've had a little bit of experience with the diesel. With Caro and Jet A, I don't see a difference at all. With diesel, there's a few differences, right down to performance. Apparently, you get more thrust even with a diesel. I just don't like the smell of the diesel.
Yeah.
I have an airport close by my house. I get 100 or so liters, or 150 liters at a time, and it's a pretty reasonable price for the Jet A.
Okay.
And it's a jet, so I put jet fuel in it.
Fuel in it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I had a flight with this one yesterday. It was not a maiden flight, but it was a flight where I had just installed a fresh radio system and made a few changes. And it was a bit tail heavy, which tends to really make it pitch sensitive, meaning that if you just give a little bit of input on the stick, it'll flare up. And when I took off, I immediately knew I had a handful. And I actually just kind of talked myself through it. And you know, we have spotters when we're flying, so we, you know, just kind of chatted back and forth. And it's a bit of a head game. You got a lot invested flying around up there. You know, you don't want to crash. There's a bit of embarrassment and pride too involved. So you know, it's flying, and the money's, you know, where your money is, where your mouth is now, kind of thing. And so you got to fly through it. You can't do anything but.